Hello and welcome to the tutorial on how an IUP can raise an expense report. So as we've learned, we have already raised a travel request, and now as an IUP I will have to raise an expense report related to this travel request I raised. The first thing we will do, as we have done so far, is go to umoja.un.org. You click enter, which leads you to the following page. Welcome to Umoja. And remember, we're clicking on Login to Umoja Self-Service. Now, to log into production, you can watch the tutorial on how to log into production, or to practice this exercise, you can view the tutorial on how to log into the training environment. Okay, so we have logged into production now, and remember, for the sake of this tutorial, I am personally logged into the training environment. Nevertheless, the screens we're going to be seeing, the steps I'm going to be following, all the explanations relate to the same exact fields and screens you're going to be seeing in production. So whatever I do here is what you will have to do in production as well. So the first thing we'll do to raise our expense report. Ensure that you are under the tab IUP Self-Service, as we are here in this tutorial. Under this section, you only have one link called Traveler Work Center. Let's ensure we click the Traveler Work Center, which leads us to a page that will summarize the trip numbers related to the travel request that we have either created, submitted, and also the status that these travel requests or expense reports are in. For example, the workflow status, as we see here, we understand that the trip number 66322 is now in draft and save mode, TO approved for the next one, and so on all the way down the line. We will have to come here to raise our expense report. But now, this is very important. A user must create and submit an expense report associated with the approved travel request within 14 calendar days of the completed trip. Failure to do so will result in the recovery of any advances paid prior to traveling. You can only raise the expense report upon returning from your trip, and only once your travel request is fully approved and the trip end date is in the past. Please do not submit a standalone expense report if you have already raised a travel request. And I'll explain how to do that, or how to avoid doing that in this tutorial. Ensure also you submit the expense report for the travel request created and fully approved. What this means is that you should only submit expense reports for those travel requests that are fully approved, as we're going to do now. We're going to be looking for travel requests that are approved, completely approved here in our work center. See the draft and saved mode? You cannot create an expense report for that travel request particularly because it has not been approved. And remember, you cannot submit a standalone expense report, especially for a travel request you have already raised. But let's see how we can do this. The first thing we will do is click on this button called Create Expense Report. We don't even have to worry about what's underneath this right now. We create our expense report. And this leads us to the following page. And you see now how the amount of trip numbers has been reduced to 4. And we can understand where the trip begins, trip ends. We have our dates here, also destination and reason for traveling. Now, if you have taken note of your trip number, which we have in this case, and I remember I had raised this travel request here, and as well as the one on the top, the ones that are leaving on April 30th and arriving on May 4th. So all I have to do is select this trip. Let's imagine we have made a mistake and now we don't want to select this trip. We want to reset the selection. All you have to do is click on the button on the top where it says Reset Selection, and that clears all our selections. You see here at the bottom, Standalone Expense Report. This is what we would like you to avoid. Do not create a standalone expense report. See, the drop-down menu only pretty much allows you the two options, or nothing here, or also the official business travel. We want to avoid that. Actually, the minute you select a trip number, as we do here, it disappears. So the system is prompting you not to raise a standalone expense report, especially for a travel request you have already raised. So remember, that is very, very important. And it's key to this tutorial. We're raising an expense report for an already fully approved travel request. In this case, it's the trip number 66320. We select the line and then we click on Start. So the very first thing, this screen looks very similar to the one that we saw when we were raising our travel request. We see also we have a timeline, and the highlighted number is the step we are at right now. So we are at the very, very beginning of raising our expense report. We see here we are creating expense report. So let's see what the screen looks like. We scroll down and we see there is quite some information, and all the way at the bottom a number of selections. For this particular scenario, we're going to select no for all the options. Take some time to read through them. Maybe in your particular case you do have to select yes. Right now we're just selecting no. And remember, if you have any doubts while raising your expense report or your travel request, you should always get in contact with your ESS focal point. This information can be found in the umoja.un.org/DFS page that we also refer to at the end of this tutorial. Very good. So we have selected no for all the options. Now the last one, I want you to pay special attention to this last one. I want this claim to be settled through. So how are we settling this claim? We have several options. In this particular case, we're selecting payroll. What does that mean? This means it settles your claim through next period's payroll. If we select EFT, EFT stands for Electronic Funds Transfer, for payment directly to a bank account you have on file with UN Treasury. Once selected, a drop-down will appear with your bank account, which is drawn from your HR profile. We're not selecting this one for this case. Our next option is Conference Paymaster. This option should only be used for meeting participants who are paid through a paymaster, person with delegation of authority to disperse funds at the event. And our last option is Other, which allows you to indicate in the remarks if you wish to have your claim settled through cash, check, or UNDP, which will be further action by the TSA. Again, we have selected payroll and we can scroll down. At the bottom, we have another checkbox that we have to check, which says, I have read, understood, and agree with the terms and conditions above. Ensure you select this checkbox or check this checkbox and click on the general data. On the following screen, we now see that number 2 is highlighted. In this next step, the traveler has to indicate the real itinerary details by clicking on Display Edit Detailed Itinerary. And where is that button? If you scroll down, underneath the comment box here, we have the button called Display Edit Detailed Itinerary. But let's take a look first at what the page looks like. Again, the timeline, our itinerary, so far, as we have selected it initially. If we want to make any changes to the itinerary, we would click on Display Edit Detailed Itinerary. The button speaks for itself. Towards the bottom, we have our account assignment information where we can ensure it is correct. We can also display it. We cannot edit it. Remember, this was defaulted when raising our travel request. And take a look at the rest of the details: subsistence allowance and mileage. If changes involve additional DSA MSA payment, the expense report will have to be approved. Any changes that directly affect the amount that you have to be paid or are to be paid will restart the approval process. Otherwise, if there are no changes, the expense report will automatically be approved. For this scenario, we're actually going to change our itinerary details. We're going to say the traveler stayed 1 extra day at destination. And in order to record that change, we will have to click on the button Display Edit Detailed Itinerary. Now we've clicked on our button Display Edit Detailed Itinerary, and what we are going to do now is change our itinerary. You see the fields are no longer grayed out, so we can change the day. Instead of the 4th, we're going to change for the 5th in this case, and we'll do the same here at arrival date and time. We'll change it to the 5th. That is the only change I'm going to do in this expense report. Now you can change here mode of travel, departure city, any other changes that you see that are not grayed out. For example, the subsistence region will change depending on the options you select here. We have only changed the departure and the arrival date. We have added 1 more day. If you look at the bottom, it says personal deviation. In this case, even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be able to change it. It's already set as no. All we have to do is click on accept. We have now changed the itinerary details, and our end date now is displayed as the 5th of May 2018. So that is all we needed to do for this change of the extra day. And the next thing we will do is click on the expense details. Once on the screen, already step 3 highlighted, we can see that the subsistence allowance amount is displayed here. It's a bit grayed out and difficult to see, but it's displayed. In this case, it shows 1,080. The subsistence allowed amount is based on your itinerary details. So please check that the expenses have been automatically updated based on the new itinerary you indicated. At this stage, the traveler can add any additional travel expenses. And how do they do that? By clicking on New Entry. If we wanted to add any additional travel expenses, we click on New Entry. And we see here on the highlighted line that we can select the expense type from a drop-down, quite a few options, and move on down the line. Actually, one of the first options we would be able to select here in the drop-down, for example, medical expenses, would display more options that we would populate with their own matchboxes and their own drop-down menus. In this scenario, we're not adding any new travel expenses. So the line that is selected, we can simply click on delete, and that will erase any of the expenses I was adding. The next step will be now to click on Review. Please review all the details of the expense report you are about to submit. We know we're here on stage 4, Review and Send. We also have the total subsistence allowance in US dollars here displayed. So review these details, because this screen summarizes the amount due or to be recovered based on the expense report details and travel advance. If you see here, the total figures, amount due or to be recovered, are in green, as they are in this case. The traveler will be paid the amount indicated in green. If the total figures, these at the bottom, are red, the amount is to be recovered. So ensure that the total subsistence allowance is correct, and also pay special attention to the color of the total amount. So our last step would be to click on Save and Send for approval. The system displays a message indicating that the expense report was saved and sent for approval. The expense report has the same number as the travel request. So pay special attention to the expense report number, as it is the same as the travel request. Thank you for following this tutorial. We have now submitted our expense report. Thank you for watching our tutorial, and don't forget to access umoja.un.org/dfs for more information. This site will be of great use for you, as if you do encounter any issues, you can access the link ESS Focal Points to find out who your ESS Focal Points are in your mission, as well as the Umoja Travel LPEs.
Voyage, voyage.